Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephen Glass. It's my pleasure to introduce the fifth installment of the Zamir Zoom series, Music in Challenging Times. Today, in conversation with Matti Lazar, is our special guest, Nick Page. If you have questions for Nick or Matti, please type them into the Zoom chat. Who doesn't know Matti Lazar, the founder and director of the Zamir Choral Foundation, which through the Choral Festival, Hazamir, Hazamir Prep, Zamir Noded, and so many other initiatives, continues to nurture the growth of Jewish choral singing in North America and Israel. In fact, it was at the Choral Festival where Matti first met Nick Page, a world music legend, a song leader, a composer, and a choral conductor. And Nick has now been a presenter at the Jewish Choral Festival for over 20 years. His pieces, Ka'ayel Ta'arog, which began our session, and Le'ela are Hazamir favorites. In fact, Nick told me that he's very proud to have been featured on Cowbell when Hazamir performed Ka'ayel Ta'arog at Carnegie Hall. Welcome, Nick. Matti, it's over to you.
Nick, thank you very much, Stephen. Nick, what would you say it is about music that enables music to help us meet our challenges, our emotional challenges and our physical challenges?
Well, first off, let me just wish all the mothers happy Mother's Day. Second, I just want to say, looking through gallery view and seeing old friends, it's wonderful to see you. Hello, David Tillman. And so to answer the question, I've been reading a lot about Elie Wiesel recently, and he says we are each other's hope. And this idea of singing together, even electronically, in these challenging times, is for me a great message of hope. Throughout history, there have been periods where there have been tremendous struggles, and the singing has brought people together in wonderful, powerful ways. In South Africa, the anti-apartheid movement was fueled by songs that eventually became one that we have sung at the festival, Yesh Lanu Koach Hallelujah, which started in South Africa. And in the United States, the civil rights movement, and all the songs that came out of there. And I think of all the songs in Israel that came out, Bashana, beautiful songs that came out during troubled times. And they're there to combine, to bring us together. So we have this tremendous opportunity, and Zoom is not a bad way to do it. And so my reaction right now is we got to sing. Oh, and don't panic. Oh, you couldn't see that one. Anyway, don't panic. All right.
And one more, Nick, be kind to each other.
Oh, yes, I have that one. Wait a minute. Be kind. You like my high-tech comments here? I have this one ready, too. You know what that is, right?
We're waiting.
Oh my Hashem.
We need to give you another bar mitzvah, Nick, as we did at the Choral Festival. You know,
was a great moment.
I'm reminded, Nick, that after the very first time that you were at the Choral Festival, you wrote a piece for I think it was the American Choral Directors Association Journal, which you said, and you'll correct me, I hope, something along the lines of, as a Unitarian, you expected that all paths would lead to the one God. And as a result, you also thought that all music would have a common trajectory to the same goal. But then you added something. Would you like to share what you thought?
Remind me.
Yes. You said that Jewish music is different because Jewish music has memory.
Ah, yes, that's the reason I am so drawn to Jewish music and always have been. It's that sense that the past is now. and the future is now. And I love what Zamir Choral Foundation does, because by supporting Hazamir, all right, we are guaranteeing that the future is now and that the past is with us all the time. And I've always loved that, that when you sing, I've been singing lately this Max Janowski melody. Yai, dai, 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 sim shalom. But when you sing that, you are singing history. You are singing the past. You are bringing the past alive. I wrote a piece for Boston Zamir that quotes Baruch Hu by Solomon Rossi. And I did it because I wanted the past to be present right now. And this short little segment of the prayer is the centerpiece of this entire piece, this little Baruch Hu. So yes, very much.
When you're singing that Max Janowski Sim Shalom, the first thing that occurs to me, of course, is that it's in minor,
Right.
which is the essential component of most of Jewish music. Even the national anthem of the Jewish state, HaTikva, even though it's from the Moldau, and even though Smetana then sets it in major key, which sounds very funny if you're trying to connect psycho-emotionally Jewishly to the tune, but it is in minor, D-Dorian minor, and that's appropriate considering that in the millennia of Jewish history, the Jews have been despised, rejected, and acquainted with grief. What better way to express that in the minor? And then, of course, there's the move to the relative major. So talk to us a little bit about how you view the minor-major dualism from a world music perspective.
I had a wonderful argument with Eleanor Epstein about this once, and I sang her Shalom Chavarim, Shalom Chavarim, Shalom. And she said, oh, that's beautiful, it's beautiful, beautiful. But then I went like this, and I went, Shalom Chavarim, Shalom Chavarim, Shalom, Shalom. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be, oh, she was getting so angry at me. She says, never do Shalom, they'll never do that song in a major key. It belongs in minor. So now, whenever I do it in a minor key, because I don't want to upset Eleanor. Anyway, so no, that's all changed though. I mean, you listen to a lot of new music now, and the whole minor major thing is not a big thing anymore.
Well, we are returning to the modal sounds, which of course preceded the major minor dualism of the Baroque. But I'm not sure you're right about that. The major minor thing has dissipated, because it's still the powerful notion of a minor key that evokes a lack of, it evokes a distancing and an unfulfilled moment, kind of like the Picardy third at the end is not a happy ending, but the smile of what might have been. And as John Nelson once talked about the second movement of the Brahms Requiem, he said, back to the dungeon, back to the D minor. And let's think a little bit about how we can maneuver people's emotions as the Picardy third does, and you do when you write your music.
Mate, I love you. You know I love you. But I have to quote my cousin. I have a cousin who's an old-time Vermonter, and he says, if you have time to talk about that, then you have too much time.
Well, we have plenty of time now, Nick.
I know, but I'm just saying that whether it's major or minor, major, minor, it doesn't matter.
Or, I didn't say it doesn't matter. It matters only as far as really understanding how people are reacting to music, at least in their classical repertoire. And when you mentioned our dear friend Salomone Rossi, who, our dear friend who I met when I was 15, he of course was dead for already more than 300 years. But when he's composing, even in the Renaissance style, when he has a cadence on the word v'nivashea, and we will be redeemed, boy, what an act of faith to have him in that cadence in a major, with a major chord. So even though in contemporary times, the modes have kind of changed, and you're an expert at maneuvering between all the modes, when we deal with music that's not contemporary, I like to at least try to get people who are singing in the choir or even playing in the orchestra to acknowledge, and this goes to your main point about living in the present. What is that chord telling you? What is that progression telling you? How are you feeling now?
You know, when you asked me to write this piece that became La'ela for Hazamir, you know what I did? I purposely started it in D Dorian. I did that for you because I know you love D Dorian. Look, every composer has 5 palettes that they choose from, and the musical palette is the least important of all of them, whether it's major, minor, melodic, harmonic, polyphonic, whatever. That's the least important. What's important is the heart, the human heart. That's number 1. Number 2, the spirit, the spirituality. A composer who believes in a hierarchical God is going to write a different piece than a Navajo Indian who believes that everything moves in a circle. It's going to be 2 different kinds of music. 3, cultural. So you're talking about cultural things, which are very, very important. And every composer, whether they know it or not, is composing within a cultural reference. That's why when I did La'ela, I brought in South African elements, because at the festival we had sung that South African song. What was it? Yeah. Yes, Larukoa, hallelujah. So I brought in the South African element. So these are all palettes that composers use, whether they know it or not.
I want to ask you about, since we're really so far talking about music with text, choral music, and the songs that you were quoting earlier, the songs of protest, songs of defiance, songs of catharsis, we're lucky in that we are able to use in choral music both sides of our brain, the emotional side that the music is being addressed to, and the cognitive side where the text is really being driven. And for us, I believe that's why choral music is such a heilige Kunst, a holy art, because we're able to achieve a higher level of unity when we combine the text and the music. Maybe you could, let's talk about it, and I'd like to hear your thinking about what it is about a text that you choose, and sometimes do you just write a piece of music and then look for a text to fit to it, as often composers do?
Well, I'm drawn again to the heart. It's the heart. And how does the emotion come through in the heart? It has to be about that. I had an experience with a group that Leon sure knows about, a group called Joyful Noise in Summit, New Jersey. They rehearse at the Jewish Cultural Center there. And they're a group of adults with physical and intellectual disabilities. And I saw them perform, and they cried when they performed. And I was sitting there just completely blown away by the experience. And I wrote them a piece based on what they had taught me. And here are the words: you have a heart, use it. You have a heart, let it out. Let your heart dance, let your heart sing. So I'm always drawn to the words that bring out emotions. I now work with a group called Sharim. We're taking a break because of this pandemic. But this Sharim, we're out of Temple Beth Elohim in Wellesley. And we go into nursing homes, we go into memory units, and we sing. And one of the songs that we do is Love Me Tender by Elvis Presley. And we had this one man in rehearsal. He went like this: love me tender. And I said, stop. You're singing it like that's the vowel. No, don't sing vowels. Sing emotions. Sing emotions. The emotion you just sang, you're attracted to this beautiful person, and what is the emotion you're giving them? And that's not going to work. You got to give them an emotion that's going to draw them in. You're not going to go, love me tender. You're going to go, What is the vowel of love? Love me tender, love me sweet. Ah, dee, dee, dee. You have made my life complete. Love me tender. And he did it. And the whole room changed, just lit up, because he was no longer singing vowels. He was singing emotions. So I'm always drawn to the emotions, and that is certainly true of the text.
Right. Let's talk about what you think of where we are in this pandemic. And since we know that you love all humanity, and part of it, as you indicated earlier, that you're seeing all your friends on the screen, and we know that we're missing a lot of the social, communal aspect of choral singing, besides the power of breathing together and singing together. There's the element of just really being in the now together, making music at the same time. What is your vision for the future, really the future of choral music or the future of music?
Well, I see something wonderful happening when we finally return to singing. I see something wonderful happening. I think we're going to realize that we have been taking it for granted for so long, and we're going to realize how precious every moment has been all along. We're going to realize that music is so much more than just letting sounds come out of your mouth, so much more than letting sounds come into your ears. One of the things we miss right now, we don't even know we miss it, is the resonance of voices hitting us and touching us. You know, when the sun hits your skin, it doesn't bounce off. You absorb the photons of the sun. And the same is true of resonance. So when you're in a room of people and you're singing or you're listening to music, you're absorbing that sound. And I'm hoping that when we do finally come back to singing together, we're going to just go, oh my OMH, this is amazing. I can feel it. I can feel it down here. I can feel it down here. I can feel it here. I can feel it up here. It's just going to blow us away. But then we're going to realize, oh my goodness, I took for granted the whole idea of consciousness. I took that for granted all along. Consciousness. What is consciousness? Scientists say consciousness is confined to the brain. Emotions are nothing more than chemical reactions. No. No, every mother on Mother's Day knows that when you hold a child, that there is consciousness from that child coming to the mother and the mother's consciousness going to the child. It's called love, and it's coming out and it's spreading. And we've been so unaware, generally speaking, that when we sing together, we are receiving and absorbing each other's consciousness. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to coming together and people realizing, oh my goodness, we're going to realize that we are blessed, and that every moment of our lives we are blessed. No matter how bad things get, we are blessed. And we're going to be amazed by now. My father's last words to me, this is a man who had dementia in his last years of his life. He never forgot the songs. He loved singing the songs, but he had dementia, and my brothers dismissed him as brain dead, not me. I kept asking him, what's the secret? What's the secret? Let me give you some of his answers. What's the secret? Everything is connected. What's the secret? That we love one another. What's the secret? If you flirt enough, it will pay off. And his last words to me, what's the secret? He said, that we are here right now. Now that's a Zen statement, if I ever heard one. And so we're going to come to that realization. We're going to come to a realization of what Buckminster Fuller said in his, he's a Unitarian hero for me. Buckminster Fuller, the designer of the geodesic dome, wrote a book called No More Secondhand God. And he talked about God as that God can become a secondhand thing. And he wanted us to see God as a firsthand thing, to experience God firsthand. And when we sing together, we have that sense that we are all together. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I've been thinking about Jacob, the old story of Jacob wrestling with God and God naming him Israel. Because right now we are struggling. We are all struggling with a second-hand God. We are struggling with the illusion, this grand illusion. And I'm hoping that when we come through this together and we come together and we sing, that second-hand God will be gone, and we'll be able to experience in the fullness of all of this. There's an answer for you.
Let me pick up on part of your answer. And of course, this is why I wanted you to be in conversation, because these are the conversations we have privately, but they're of such great beneficial effect on everyone in our community with your wide-ranging wisdom, vision, and interconnectedness. Because you said now and you said God several times, I want to point out that the word in Hebrew for now, the present, is hoveh. And hoveh is 3 letters that are 3/4 of God's name. And it's all about being in the present. So there's my little wisdom back to you about that.
And Marty, let me say, I love watching conductors work. And I love when I watch you conduct, because you are very, very much into the now, and you demand that from people. And I love watching you working, particularly with the youth, with the Hazamir, because they all of us, not just youth, all of us, we go into autopilot and we just turn things off and we just sing the music exactly the same every time. You do not allow that. And I love that. And I love that of watching, Marcia conduct, or Josh Jacobson up in Boston. I love watching great conductors work because they demand that the autopilot be turned off and that it all be now.
I want to connect the autopilot syndrome with your wish of the blessing that we will experience when the world returns to the way in which we hope it will return. I am very certain that we will all feel blessed and will all appreciate exactly what we've been missing, because I think we're mostly suffering from what we're missing. But here's the challenge. After you have a revelation, after you have that epiphany, how do you maintain it? For the first few times that people will rehearse, they will experience that rush. How to maintain that feeling of connectedness, how to insist on it, and how to have conductors or any leaders remind us, the group, that we are starting to slide back into the automatic pilot. What are some of the ways in which you can imagine addressing that challenge?
I have been reading a remarkable book. This is Witness by Ariel Berger, our friend Ariel. And it's his account of studying with Elie Wiesel. And what I love what Elie Wiesel does is he's always telling stories. He's always telling stories. And so it is our stories. It is the singer's stories. Those are the things that illuminate us. Those are the things that bring us in, the stories. And so I would encourage people to tell stories and make that part of the whole experience, just to let people remind themselves of how blessed we are, and not by sharing these stories to not go into that autopilot. But you may have an answer. What is your answer?
I'm not sure what the answer is. I know that this is always the challenge of ritual and consciousness. Does ritual precede consciousness? Does consciousness then, or does consciousness need a ritual to help perpetuate it? And once, I'll get to you to say, and once one loses interest or goes to automatic pilot on the ritual, you have ritual without consciousness. But how do you perpetuate consciousness without some form of mnemonic or ritualistic device?
Well, you can use a ritualistic device. I have a mantra that I use: E equals MC squared. Energy equals music times consciousness squared. All right. Now, what is consciousness squared? I am consciousness, right? But a group full of people, that's consciousness squared. And then when you imagine that right now, even through Zoom, all right, we are not disconnected right now. There are 174 participants right now on this Zoom meeting. We are now consciously connected, and understanding that is extremely important. So in rehearsal, just a constant mantra that we are connected right now. Please keep that connection going. And when people sing and the vowels come out generic and they're lacking emotion, just this constant, joyful reminder of what we are capable of.
I want to interject, because it's part of the spirituality of music, that the ways in which, one of the main ways in which the ritual can be connected to the consciousness is through music, which is why in all cultures, and certainly in the Jewish people's culture, that the music played such a major role in the temple service. Usually it was in a major key, so to speak, before the diaspora experience, but the ability of music to move people, and I was trying to elicit this in the very opening question. There's the music, the harmony, the melody, and of course the underlying rhythm, whether it's a tambourine or a cowbell, or the harmonic rhythm, meaning the rate at which the harmony changes. But those two elements together can inspire people to get into music time, which is beyond actual clock time. And once you're in music time, you're in metaphysical areas, and then you can connect to whatever spiritual realm you're able to connect to. So music is our guidepost.
Yeah, and you talk about, the origins of singing and rhythm. And I like to remind people that the oldest song in the world, the first song ever sung, and this is appropriate for Mother's Day now, okay? The oldest song in the world was a mother holding a baby, and the mother looking at that baby and going, ah, that's the first song. And what did the baby do? The baby went, ah, okay? A song was born. And then the mother looked at the moon and went, oh, and the baby went, oh, and the mother was surprised and went, ee, and the baby went, ee. His voice changed. The point is, you can go anywhere in the world, no matter what language people speak, the sound coming out of them is going to be an emotion. Now, you like to remind us that it's not just the song, it's the dance, it's the rhythm. And that's the drumming. We heard drumming. What did we do? Our adrenaline system. We heard the drumming, the adrenaline system picked up. And what did we do? We went with it. What would you go with it? You do the same thing a heartbeat does. When a heartbeat hears something active, it just starts going. You do the same thing the brain does. When the brain has a nice exciting, the brain waves change. And so you are changed by the pulse. So I just like to remind people of that aspect of music, the primitive aspect, that it's just part of our DNA. I mean, Leonard Bernstein loved talking about that it's part of our DNA.
I want to thank you for the history of the evolution of vowels. You have two more vowels to explain to us if you would like to.
What?
Luckily, Marty, I have the pleasure of something that I've looked forward to for 30 years since I first worked with you, which is that I can give you a cutoff. The questions are extraordinary. Some have been emailed to me. So I'm going to ask the two of you if we can keep it moving, because many of these things touch on absolutely pertinent and somewhat evocative themes. So let's begin. I'm just going to ask you to really just focus so I can get through to as many questions as have come in. So for the immediate, somebody's asked, do you have any suggestions for how to live without choral singing in this current period?
Nick, you've developed some thoughts about this.
Well, my first reaction is something that Stephen reminds us of, which is just to sing. And You know, and even just by yourself, sing in the shower, sing when you're just walking, cleaning around the house. Just sing. Get that resonance going in your body, just to keep yourself alive. But when we're on Zoom, there are creative ways. All right. In nature, it is not survival of the fittest in nature. Nature works through a system of creativity, and it is the creative that survive. It is those species that know how to adapt. And so we have to adapt to our changing world. And right now it's digital, all right? So you can do a thing. I was thinking just this morning where you just have everyone just drone. Don't do it now, but everyone drone on the note, right? At their homes, just to keep that note going. Oh, one of those notes. And then a soloist just comes in and going, oh, say shalom, v'imromav, just to keep it going. My creative response to all this with my chorus, I have two things. One, Wednesday night, I'm leading a weekly sing-along at 7:30, all right? In the summer, it's going to move to Tuesdays. But it's just a weekly sing-along. I project the lyrics up on the wall, on the screen. I go like this. Watch. I'll just show you real quick here. Here's a little song. I put the words up. If you can walk, then you can dance. If you can talk, then you can sing. If you can hope, then you can dream. You can do most anything. And so I do these Wednesday night sings. But also on Tuesday nights with my chorus, I like having a goal. And the mission of my chorus is singing as an act of compassion. So our goal is to end the season right now by creating videos. And I have learned how to create a video using Zoom to record a session. Then I have a software called Camtasia, which I've been spending a year studying, fortunately, and I can use that to create a virtual video. So that is my creative solution. But it is our creativity and our compassion that will get us through. But it starts with singing.
So there seems to be a lot of anxiety being expressed. One person says, Matti, do you have a really good recipe for Shavuot cheesecake? I'm going to leave that one, but move on to a musical one for Nick. And I think this really embodies what I'm hearing. A lot of chatter, a lot of people are asking me this. So let me throw it to you. And it's sort of prophesying for the future. The question reads, what's your forecast for the future? Weeks, months, half a year? Are we going to be rehearsing with masks? Can we overcome our fear, our legitimate fear of singing together?
Let me jump in to say that we really don't know what the future will bring in that way, and that's why hope is so valuable and so important, and I would dare say essential. But I would report to you all that in the state of Israel, it's already a week that the government has allowed choral singing in some way to exist. The limit is now 19 people, with rehearsals being outdoors with electric pianos. Because, of course, in Israel after Passover, the sun is always shining. But I don't think we can predict here what will be. I don't want to give into any kind of prognostication that continues a depressive mode about thinking about this. I'm always a hopeful person, and that's why I mentioned to you what's happening in Israel. But the main thing, and I'd like to backtrack to what Nick was saying, even if you don't have Zoom capability, singing anything, and if you're a choral singer, you know your part, find a recording of the music that you've sung with your choir, sing along. And if your sight reading is good enough, and you have enough music of the Brahms Requiem or great pieces by Bach or Mozart, sing along. Singing is the active participant there. You're the active participant, and just singing, as Nick said, is the most valuable experience.
So Matti, I'm going to jump in just because questions are now, it's red hot here. Somebody's asked if you could drill down a little bit on preparing for the high holidays, format for the high holidays, choirs on the high holidays.
Fortunately, I am not having to deal with that kind of issue. And the rabbis and the cantors of all denominations are now trying to figure out, will they have in-person services? Will it be Zoom? We've seen, at least during the Purim holiday that there were Zoom readings of the Megillah where there was a cantor or someone else reading with people 6 to 10 feet away, I can see how that would happen. What that means for choral activity, it's too early to know. One can be optimistic and have a model for some kind of singing. You know, professional singers, in my experience, at the top level professional singers are, they might not want 6 feet apart, but don't get closer than 3 to 4 feet to them because they like to have that space. So it's possible you would have a small number of singers and they would be at appropriate distances, or it could be that the choir is not an art form or a worship form that will be able to be injected into the service, which would be quite a loss, I think, for almost anyone who loves music as part of their worship service.
Well, I think you have to rethink what is a choir, okay? And perhaps instead of thinking of it as an SATB ensemble, think of it as a group of souls who are here to express, to pray, to worship together, all right? And so let's say you're doing a song like Eli, Eli, okay? I'll just sing the melody because I don't remember all the words. But you could have one person, a member of the choir, press unmute. Die, 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 die. Next person, press unmute. Die, die, da, da, die, da, da, die. Next person, unmute. Die, 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 da, da, die, die. Next person, die, die, da, da, die, die. What you're doing by doing that is you're creating a sense of community. You are bringing us together in a creative way. It's no longer SATB, but it's still the choir. So that's just one creative solution to that problem. And I'll say about group gatherings, we have never had a germ-free environment, ever. But this germ is particularly bad. And so the truth is, I believe, that we will never, ever again, ever have a safe environment. That said, we will come together to sing, knowing that there's always going to be that risk. And
Nick, if people have specific questions for you, are you comfortable with me sending them to your website?
I am very comfortable, and they can go to my website is nickmusic.com. And they can just do nick@nickmusic.com.
So once again, if you want to ask...
I want to just repeat, just sing.
So if you want to find out information about the software that Nick referred to, or any other questions, musical ones, nick@nickmusic.com. Nick, here's a really heartfelt comment, and it summarizes where some people are living emotionally, and I think that with your positivity, you'd be the best person to address this. The person writes, during the pandemic, many of my fellow professional singers, cantors, and cantoral soloists are saying they just can't get the notes out because it's too stressful right now. I'm feeling this as well. I think I may be losing my compassion in my singing.
That's a different issue than the one that we're talking about. That's more of a psycho-emotional issue,
Indeed.
Of course. My suggestion would be to go back to breathing. Everything is about the breathing. In breath, out breath, some kind of meditation, and then the most basic form of reminding yourself to let go of all those negative thoughts in the most basic form of meditation. Just keep deep breathing and let yourself either moan or groan or sigh, and sighing can lead to pitch.
But
also,
I would also add, not just let go of that, but maybe let go of the need for you to be the person doing this. And so remember the quote from Elie Wiesel, we are each other's hope. Let someone else do it. Let someone else do it. I remember the words that Pete Seeger gave me once. Pete Seeger heard me leading a song, and he came up to me afterwards and he said, once you get them singing, stop singing. He said, let them be your voice. So that's a little advice I would give.
Marty, I wonder if I could jump in because, you know, as from the perspective of somebody who's sort of been in the business and also who gets so many calls from different people, and at the risk of, well, maybe embarrassing you, but with something we've talked about a lot, the idea of getting out of the way. If people have actually analyzed what you're doing, it's not flamboyant. You've never done an interpretive dance to the music. It's about the small gestures to enable the people to produce something and communicate it to everybody else. So I'd like to just suggest for those people who are hurting and who are missing it and saying they've lost their love of it, I'm wondering whether they've lost their love perhaps of, or they're missing their performing, but you can't lose your love of the music. You can't lose your love of what the text's trying to say. You can't lose your love of the harmony. You can't lose your love of the invention. So I would remind people, you may not be able to perform the stuff and you may not get that thrill of being with people, but when you listen to it, you're reminded about why you're in this business. You're reminded about why you can't wait to get back. And so I would say to a lot of people, even non-musicians, you have to be kind not only to yourself, I mean, rather not only to other people, but to yourself. I'm hearing a lot of people who need to be talking very gently to themselves. They're saying things they would never allow anybody to say to them. Thoughts? You've always made it about the music.
It is about the music, and you're right that I don't try, I'm just blessed in that way. And all great conductors know the same thing. Know the music, know the text, know it so well. Leave your ego behind. Just model what it is. And most performing groups love an audience, but they love rehearsing more because they're doing it lishma, for its own sake. And if you can focus back in on the joy that you can bring to yourself from the sheer act of singing or playing, then you're most of the way towards getting through this pandemic. Don't be afraid to be not as perfect as you think you ought to be in a different world. Just get out of your own way and just be. There's that idea of being in the now. Just be where you are and let it come out of you in a musical way or in some kind of expression in music.
I want to say, I mentioned the book, No More Secondhand God by Buckminster Fuller. In the book, he has a quote that I read in high school and it changed my life forever. He said, God is a verb, not a noun. And I've thought about that my whole life. My hand is a verb. It is atoms in the act of being a hand, all right? So when we sing, it is a verb. When we are now, it is a verb. And I just want to take a moment now to thank Mati, to thank Vivian, to thank everyone involved with Zamir, to thank the Zamir Choral Foundation for all the amazing work that you do. And I also want to thank those who support it. And that's something that is very important to do right now, to support the Choral Foundation. I think it's something very, very much worth supporting, because what are you talking about? You're talking about the future. You're talking about the future. So those are my thoughts.
So really all that's left for me to do is to thank you, Nick, and to thank you, Mati, and in fact to thank everybody who joined us online today. And in case you haven't heard, some very exciting news that a few anonymous donors have contributed $50,000 towards a matching grant to the Zamir Choral Foundation. So that's every dollar given will be matched 1-to-1. So it means that whatever we donate is doubled. And those of you who know me know that I've seen firsthand, it's a unique role that the Zamir Choral Foundation plays in the Jewish world. I've seen how the lives of Jewish teenagers have been changed, how their Jewish identity and love of Israel has been nurtured. It's only through individual donations from us that the foundation can continue its remarkable work. Hazamir Prep, Hazamir, Zamir Noded, the Zamir Chorale, and of course, the North American Jewish Choral Festival. So we're already 40% towards our goal. And if you look in the chat, you have an opportunity to click on the link and to give now. I also love the fact that you can just reach for your cell phone and text ZCF give to 44321. So 44321 and text ZCF give. Remember, whatever you donate is doubled. While you're taking care of that, it's my pleasure to trigger 2 fantastic recordings of Nick's Ka'ayel Ta'arog and La'ela. So again, it's thank you, thanks for joining us, and stay safe.
So my soul longs for thee. As the deer longs for the stream, so my soul longs for thee. Are we live? So, Mati, how was that for you? Oh, are we still on?
Yes, we are.
Well, I enjoyed this. I particularly liked hearing those pieces right now. And I was, I like that. That was very nice.
Nick, that was phenomenal. Just everything I could hope for. You're just an extraordinary human being.
Well, I had it all written down, everything I wanted to say here. So
Okay,
I managed to get it all in.
you got a lot of things in there.
And I didn't tell any jokes. You know, there's a story I didn't get in. Can I tell you a story right now?
Please, please. And the people who are on will be happy to hear it.
Yeah, it's a story. This is a story that an evening that changed my life. And I've never told it at the festival. In 2002, my chorus, the Mystic Chorale, we went to Germany. And in 2002, in the summer of 2002, the United States was leading up towards war. And everything on the media was hate, fear, revenge. Hate, fear, revenge. And so we were scheduled to perform in Hechingen, this little town outside of Stuttgart, and at an old synagogue. And this synagogue had been rebuilt in the 1970s by the Lutherans. All right, it had been destroyed on Kristallnacht and had been rebuilt by the Lutherans as an act of healing. It was their act of dealing with the sins of the fathers. And the man who organized it, his name was Adolf. He was born in 1942. He never changed his name, but he had to do something. And so he rebuilt this synagogue, and it was beautiful. It was a small building, had a dome, a blue dome on the top with stars and planets, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And that evening was the most powerful evening of my life. We met a woman who had been in the Kinder transport, who had gone off to England and then come back. And she just passed away last week, and I learned of her death, and I'm thinking of her today. And we sang, and when we sang in Hebrew, the walls seemed to resonate. And but the night before, I had a dream. And in this dream, children attacked me, and they stuck fish hooks in my hand. They did what children do when they are taught hate, fear, and revenge. Hate, fear, and revenge. They struck out in anger and in violence. And then I chased these children, and they were drowning a policeman. And I chased the children away and pulled up the policeman. And he had fish hooks in his hand. But I remember the children from my dream. There was two German boys, a German girl, two Mediterranean youths, and one black child. And I remember their faces. And that night in the synagogue, the night after having that dream, we sang with tears in our eyes. We sang this song, an old spiritual, let's see. The sun will never go down, go down. The sun will never go down. The flowers are blooming forever. The sun will never go down. A song that gives me great hope. We sang it with tears in our eyes. I looked up at the dome above us and I said, the stars will never go down. We sang that. The hope will never go down. But at the end of the sing, I did a beautiful, rousing South African song. We are free, we are free, we are free. And there were children in the audience, and I brought them up to the front. And I gave them all instruments, and they played, and they smiled, and they danced. And there was two German boys, one German girl, two Mediterranean children and one black child. They were the children from my dream. And I learned something that night. We can teach hate or we can teach love. And I decided that evening to teach love. The rest of my life to teach love. Elie Wiesel said the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And
The opposite of hate is not love. The opposite of hate is either way. Either way.
Either way. The opposite of justice is not injustice, it's indifference.
You know,
so, whatever.
No. It's a beautiful. I'm glad to hear your epiphany. But what I'm struck about is something I know about you, which is that you're a highly evolved spiritual individual, and in the Jewish tradition, until Moses, the only way that God is speaking to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, anyone else, is always through their dreams, always in a dream.
Interesting. Tell us about your Jewish interpretation of God as a verb.
Well, it's it's less of an interpretation than a clarification of one of the ways in which God is supposed to be introduced to the Israelites. And Moses says to God, "What shall I say when the Israelites in bondage ask me, 'Who sent me? Who sent you?' And God says, 'Eheyeh asher eheyeh,' which is incorrectly translated as 'I am that I am.' What it really is 'I will be that which I will be,' which is some form of a verb, because God acts through history. And that is pretty much the combination of your wisdom and the wisdom of the Jewish people. You know, Judaism is primarily, for me, the greatness of the religion is that it is both a Western religion and an Eastern religion. It starts out as an Eastern religion, and because of its complexity and its duality, it's allowed to exist both in the ritual and the consciousness from the East to the West, because it's really, half of God's name is breath. The four characters are a yud, a hey, a vav, and a hey, and two of those characters are the breath character. And when God changes Abraham's name from Avram to Avraham, the Bible, the Torah, is telling us, pay attention to that hey character, that breath character. And then Sarai, his wife, is barren until she loses the diphthong and ends up with a H in her name. And all of a sudden, she is able to conceive. Another example of pay attention to that breath character. It's all the breath.
Well, I have some dreams I won't share with you.
Set them to music, and we'll be able to get them, and then we'll send them to Dr. Ruth.
I sent my dreams to my brother Ted, and he says I need to set them to music. Some of them aren't so pretty.
Well, the Claire Nacht is not so pretty either. But you don't have to publish them, Nick. They can just remain. They can just remain. And when someone comes to you at the end and they say, "What's your secret?" you can say, "Look at this music. That's my secret." That was a wonderful story about your father. Really wonderful.
Oh, remarkable man, remarkable end of his life. Absolutely remarkable. He loved to sing. He never forgot the songs.
Quite different than the end of your mother's life.
Yeah, but I wrote a song about my father at the end of his life. I wrote a song called "The Songs Are the Last to Go." It's in my musical, Attack of the Windmills. But in the song, this old man who has forgotten everything, but he remembers the songs, and he sings, we sing what we know what we sing. We remember the songs in our hearts, and when we are old and memories fade, the songs are the last to go. The brain doesn't matter, just endless patter. We forget almost all that we know, but the heart is the singer. Its melodies linger. The songs are the last to go. And that line, the heart is the singer, that is central to everything.
I like the next line, the songs are the last to go,
Yeah.
because we all know that that is the case. We had an experience once with Zamir Chorale going to Israel. We were in an old age home, and we started singing this tune that Theo Bekel had taught us, Yabayus Yanika Avo. And we started singing, and some older gentleman in the back starts singing, and everyone is looking at him. And it turns out that this man had not spoken in 20 years. And when he heard this song, the heavens opened up, and his mouth opened up, and his brain opened up. And then shortly after that, he was back to the elder state. It's so true about the songs.
Yeah, this group Sharim that I work with, when we go and sing at memory units and we start singing an old song, and they just light up and they start singing along, and the caregivers say that person hasn't talked in months.
Yeah.
Marty, I'd like to jump in because some people are afraid that you and Nick don't know that they're listening in on this.
Oh, no. Oh, thank you.
So you've got 102 people eavesdropping on your conversation.
Why are you all still there? Go home, make supper, do something.
So just
Donate to the foundation.
in case you are going to make any disparaging comments about a particular singer or a piece of music you don't like, I'm just warning you. And somebody wrote in, they're still waiting for your cheesecake recipe. So, you know, I'll tell them they can be directly in contact with you, or is it Viv?
Yes. And if there are people who have questions, if you don't mind my suggesting you, everyone should know that Stephen is quite an expert on the Zoom spheres. So please don't hesitate if you have a question for Stephen to write to Stephen, because he is an expert on the kinds of things we were talking about. Of course, you all heard Nick's genius at work before. You know, I'm happy that all these people are listening. Stephen, thanks for informing us, because everyone hears that this is the kind of conversation that Nick have, whether we have an audience or not. We just love talking about this kind of thing.
The difficulty is that when you say things like Zamir Zoom series, you never know whenever everybody's hearing it, laughing, whether they think, what an idiot, or what's his accent, you know, so you're just throwing that stuff out. It's sort of like, you know, finishing some of those great pieces that you've premiered and there being stone silence after that final fortissimo double divisi chord, and you'd sort of turn around and you realize nobody was listening.
Well,
it's quite challenging.
It doesn't often happen, but you made me think of something I was watching the other night about comedy clubs that are open, but no one is listening. There's no audience response. But, you know, in our business, it doesn't make a difference if anyone is listening or not. We're doing it because it's a holy act of music making, of expressing ourselves to our creator. And when other people are involved, Nick, jump in on this, when other people are involved, it's all for the better. But when you're practicing, when you're playing, and you're playing a Schubert moment musico, or you're playing anything, something real is happening. And it's not just music therapy for yourself. There's a real act in the world.
Leon put something in the chat. He says he wants to hear more of my father's last words, and I would like to share one more. I would take him for drives in the country, and this was, you know, and the dementia was there. And I remember stopping once by a field of flowers on a sunny day, and I said to him, "What are those flowers telling you?" And he looked and he said, "Shine." That's all he said, shine. And of course I wrote a song about it. The flower's simple message, shine just like the sun. Give back the light, the love that you receive. And so it is with music. Songs are like the sun. We sing because there's so much light within.
Nick, how long does it take you to come up with a melody when you see a text that you like?
I wrote that melody at a synagogue in Boca Raton, Florida. Florida. I was sitting there. I had the words, and I was waiting to do something at the synagogue, and And that melody just came to me right at that moment. I just wrote it. Yeah,
Marty, the
it
person
happens.
that wanted me to tell you that everybody's listening has said, as a result of my speaking to you, 10 people then left the room,
Ah,
and also that I was supposed to wrap it up for you, not encourage you to talk more. So,
okay.
could you
Well,
just
All
tell
right.
us, should we prepare dinner and settle down for the evening, or what's the plan?
I think the plan is, you had the plan. We were going to play out. I want to thank, I don't know what to tell you, but I want to thank you very much, Stephen. I didn't know that you were still on, so you were awesome, as I knew you would be. And I'm so glad that we had this opportunity to express so much of our combined, not only brain power, but emotion power, and the combination of everything that's in our hearts and in our minds. And it's those two, it's the combination of the heart and the mind that I think is what we all need to be working on to become more unified. We shouldn't go into the emotion, we shouldn't go into the hyper intellectual. We need to be able to combine the emotions and the intellect, and nothing does that better than choral music.
So may I, on your behalf and Nick's, thank Francine for doing some of the technical work. It also gives me a chance to have the last word, unless you say something after this, which is fine.
Happy Mother's Day, Francine.
And Matti, thank you again, both to you and of course our special guest, Nick. So Francine, if your mouse is hovering over that red button that says end meeting, now would be a very good time. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Bye.